Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Abby the Food Scientist. I am Abby, and today I am joined by my special guest, Matthew Teegarden. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
So Matt is a man who wears many hats. He is part food chemist, part nutrition scientist, is a TV show host, and probably most importantly, my friend. So, Matt, I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me on, Abbey.
Yes. So, where I thought we should start is actually how we met because we didn't go to the same university or the same food science program, because you and I actually met through IFT, which is the Institute of Food Technologists. And we were introduced by, I think, a friend. Is that right?
Yeah, we have a mutual friend, and it's actually funny. My best memory of you, Abby, is just your laugh, and like just you have a very distinctive personality and one that I really get along with. So we kind of instantly meshed together really well.
Yes, I remember because this friend Amy and were in the same lab in grad school. Her and I are really good friends just because we were in grad school for so long with each other. And when we went to the IFT meeting, like this big conference, she's like, "Oh, you got to meet Matt. Like you're gonna love him." And that is the best way to meet friends. I love having like someone I know be like, "You gotta have meet this person." Like that's the best way to vet people to be good.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I know Amy because we were both student association presidents together through IFT. So like we also spent a lot of time together. So yeah, it's funny. She knew both of us really well and knew.
Yes, exactly. And I wanted to talk about IFT because I'm sure you feel the same way, is that I have gained so much from being an IFT volunteer, a member. And many years ago, a professor just told me, like as a freshman, like, "Oh, you might as well join IFT." I had no idea what it was then.
Right. No, I'm the same way. I got involved in IFT because I heard about their product development competitions as a student and ended up, leading a team at OSU. Didn't do very well. We didn't make it to the finals or anything, but that was sort of my first bite into IFT. And then after that, I just kept getting more involved. And I totally agree. It paid off in droves. Like the number of people that I've met, the contacts that I have across the world, it's kind of staggering because if not for that, my network would just be basically here where I am in Ohio.
Right. It's funny, my start in IFT, I also think was the product development competitions, but I always made the mistake of being on a team with like my two best friends, and we always did terribly. Like didn't even like have the report in a good shape.
Right. Yeah, it was a mess.
But besides product development competitions, you and I both did College Bowl, which is food science trivia. It's like super nerd show, trivia show. But I mean, there's for students, IFT has what other competitions? I'm trying to think.
They have a couple other ones. So there's the product development competitions, there's College Bowl, there's undergraduate research. Didn't you lead that one for a few years?
I did lead that one. That's really funny that I forgot. I ran that competition 1 year. Yes. Yeah. If not 2 years, maybe.
Too, yeah. So there's undergraduate research, and then there's also they have some newer competitions around science communication and things like that. So there's quite a few things to go for, and on top of that, there's also scholarships and things like
Oh,
that too.
yes. Yeah. I know at least 1 year I got a scholarship through IFT. But
Yeah.
I think, well, you and I are sitting here today because of IFT, because, like you said, I met so many new friends through the student association because I volunteered. I mean, there's a ton of volunteer roles and they're fun roles. It's not like, you meet so many good people. But like we said, I volunteered, I ran different student competitions. You really dug in and were president, which is like a 3 year term. So you were a bit more intense than me. But like there's very simple volunteer roles, like I often did for a couple years, but you can really get involved.
Yeah. And what's nice too is even if you're involved as like a competition chair, you still meet a lot of people through it. You meet all the students that you're talking with, you meet the professionals that are judging the competition. And then like, so it's a great networking opportunity at all levels. And people say networking like it's this like business term, but I feel like it's more than just sort of like meeting people in the industry. You're really meeting a lot of friends that are good to have in your career and
Yeah.
your life.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Yeah, networking, I mean, like, I have made great friends because when you're involved in the student association, everyone, is kind of around your same age or at the same stage in their career. But
Right.
it's really just people who, if they were at your university, you probably would be friends with. But
Right.
IIT, brings all these different universities together. And so you meet people who are just like you, just in a different place in the world.
Right. And even something like College Bowl, competing in College Bowl, I mean, we're all just like huge nerds for food trivia, like in food science trivia. So it's just like
Right.
it's really people that you can get along with and joke around with. You all know like the same sort of like crazy facts and can joke about that and have friendly competition at the same time.
Yes, I agree. College Bowl is the perfect place for me to make friends because everyone is a super nerd, like loves food science as much as you do. So
Yeah.
like oh, College Bowl is the best memories. Did I ever play you in College Bowl? I feel like maybe once.
Maybe one I so two-time runner up, national runner up, was a bridesmaid. Um so I think we must have played each other at some point. The best part for me was when I was like the answer to a question because there's always a question of like who's the current IFT Student Association president, and
Mhm.
I think I was on stage for that question, and it was very meant for me, you know.
That is amazing. I mean, I think that I would love to be an answer. I don't think that would ever happen unless I do like really big things in my future. But I would say my best memory was probably winning the whole thing.
Oh, okay. Just had to bring that up.
Yeah, after like 7 years of being in this competition, finally won it and could step away.
Uh, so actually, Ohio State won this year, where I went to school. Ohio State won this year, and I was like the proud mom in the front row,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Taking pictures of everyone. Yeah, it was good living vicariously through them.
Were you like stressed? Were you sitting in the audience watching the competition?
Oh,
Oh,
it's a nail biter, and you're like trying to calculate like, okay, if they get this one right, then they're far enough ahead that the other team can't catch up, and so they've won it even before it's over, and
yes.
yeah.
I hated sitting in the audience because even when you compete, the rounds you're not competing, you sit in the audience. And I would try to like not listen to the questions. Like I needed to like meditate because oh, it stressed me out being in the audience. No. But yeah, I hope people see like it IFT, especially the student association. I I can't even like put into words how much I learned. Like
Oh yeah.
like how many people I've met, like people who have more connections that I could have ever, thought of, and the friends I've made. Like I don't know. Do you have anything to say about that?
You know what? I think it's something that I would never trade that experience for anything, and it's only provided the foundation of my like professional career, basically. Um,
Yes.
but I think too, just exactly what you're saying, the friends that I've made and kept, like our mutual friend Amy, I'm still talking to her like pretty much every day. Like
Yes.
we're best friends, and so I wouldn't have met her if not for IFT. And the other thing I would say too is it's a great opportunity to learn a lot of like soft skills.
Yeah.
And these are still things that I'm doing now. So strategic planning, even ways of reaching out to people in a very professional way. Like it's something that I felt a lot more prepared to move into the professional world after having gone through this like sometimes formal but mostly informal training on these types of skills.
I I totally agree because in one of my positions, this was when I was the vice president, I want to say of like membership development or something like that. But basically one day of the conference, I ran like a mini conference for like the presidents of each food science club. I
Mhm.
forget what it's called, but basically it's like this whole group of students come together and we do some training of like how would you run your club, how would you organize it, like leadership development. And I like I put that all together. Like that was like an experience I owned. Like I was the one up at the mic being like welcoming everyone. I was running, introducing the guests, like I planned the agenda, and I had never done that for anything. And that was such a unique experience that I would have never had otherwise.
Right. And it's something like the idea of putting together meetings is actually really hard. Like
Yes.
what agenda would be most meaningful for these people? What would get people excited to be here and things like that? You're totally right. You're running the show.
Yes.
And so like that's something that you can really only build with practice. And IFT was a great place to do that.
I think so. Or the hardest thing I learned for IFTSA was like running the meeting, but also making sure the meeting moved forward. Like all online meetings, you got to keep the agenda moving forward. Oh, and for IFT, because people are located all around the world, it's all online meetings, and
Oh
someone
yeah.
has to be leading, leading the conversation.
Going into the pandemic, people were like, "Oh, we have to work on Zoom," and I'm like, "Oh, I've been working on Zoom for years now."
Yes, absolutely. Because, like I said, like this is largely US members, but it is also people all around the globe that I worked with.
Right. It was an amazing experience, and it's actually the first time that I went viral was when I was VP of marketing and communications is what it was called at that time. But the student association has a blog, and I managed the blog, and I remember at some point we had set kind of like a goal to like do more posts that might be like controversial to get some conversation going and things like that. And so a group of students and I wrote an open letter to the Food Babe, who's like an online personality that, doesn't always speak so truthfully about around science and food. And it like ended up immediately going viral. And like no one was prepared for that to happen. And we didn't know what we were doing. And it got a lot of media attention. And it was a lot of fun. And then kind of sparked my interest in like other areas of food science, like how to and like open my eyes to other careers in food science too. Like, am I going to go into product development, or could I do something else with this degree and stuff like that? So it also sort of widened my experience in IFT, widened my horizons of what I might want to do professionally.
Yes. And I actually remember this letter because Amy, no one, like you said, no one was prepared. So our friend was telling me, like, oh my goodness, they wrote this letter on the blog and like it is going crazy. Like everyone's looking at it. And I think it's still up because I think sometimes when I
Yeah,
search food science, like Food Science Babe comes up, and then this letter to Food Science Babe comes up that you guys wrote. So
yeah,
I vividly remember it because I don't think I wrote for the blog while you were managing it, but a couple years later, I started writing for IFTSA's blog. Yes,
yeah, yeah. It was it was fun though.
yes, yeah. You never know what experience you will get through IFT, but it's always been so much fun and really, really beneficial. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, both of us could probably talk about IFTSA like for an hour, but I'm going to move us along because you also have a very unique job or experience where you wear this hat of being a food chemist, but you also have, sort of a nutritional scientist aspect as well. So, could you tell me how that sort of happened?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. So maybe as some of your viewers know, food science is a very applied science. And so you're kind of applying basic sciences to studying food. So the lab group that I joined in grad school was an analytical chemistry lab. So I did a lot of analytical chemistry, but it was sort of applied to foods and biological samples. And so we essentially would study the food, collaborate with people to run clinical trials, animal trials, things like that on the food, and then also analyze the samples at the end. And so we had to sort of develop this appreciation of, what's the chemistry of the food itself as, as the food in the body, and then after it comes out of the body. And so in doing that, my training was very cross-disciplinary. So trained in food science, but have a lot of, practical lab experience doing animal work, running clinical trials, doing like cell work in a petri dish and things like that. So it was a good opportunity for me to sort of develop this really broad skill set. And so that's why I would describe myself as sort of a cross between a nutrition scientist and a food chemist, because I really have like one foot in each
Mhm.
camp.
That's interesting. So I know, at least for me, where I did my bachelor's degree, we took one nutritional science class.
Yeah.
So this is why I find it so interesting. But you mostly learned your nutritional science aspect like on the job during your research, or did you take more classes?
That's a good question. So I did take a few more classes in graduate school. So just like you in undergrad food science, there was one sort of basic nutrition class. It's the same intro to nutrition class that nutrition majors take, at least at Ohio State it was. But yeah, once I moved into my graduate program, depending on what lab you're in, right, that you're going to kind of be advised to take different types of classes to sort of specialize down. So I was advised to take the graduate level, like micro and macronutrient nutrition classes. So that's like a year of basic like nutritional biochemistry that I still like rely on today. I took really good notes in that class and I was really proud of my binders. So I have those saved. But yeah, so I did get a little bit more formal training, but then a lot of it too was sort of like how to do research in that field was
Yeah.
very much, practical experience.
Okay. No, that is interesting. So my PhD classes were also very specialized, and people probably don't even know these classes exist. Mine was not nutrition. I went into like physical chemistry, and I would do like physical chemistry of surfaces, physical chemistry of interfaces. Like
Right.
during PhD, you get so specific. It's crazy.
I
Yeah.
took a class on food colorants because a lot of the stuff that I work with is very pigmented. And so that class covers a lot of those types of chemical compounds that are present in foods. And like, so I took one of those. I'm trying to think if there's any other really strange classes I took in graduate school.
Yeah, like the classes are small. It was like maybe 20 students in these classes.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But do you think so? During graduate school, you kind of learn these two different, I guess, sides. Has that helped you in any way during your career, or how did you use these skills?
Totally. And that's the thing is I think what I learned is that I really like that sort of niche area. And so as I worked at my previous company, it was like a nutritional products company. So obviously I worked in product development, so I was pretty heavy on the food science side, but being able to talk to the nutrition scientists, talk to the regulatory scientists, and like understand that language and be able to talk both sides was really helpful. So it helped there. And then now I work at Ohio State in a program called Foods for Health, and so we are very much cross-disciplinary, crossing food science, nutrition, medicine, agriculture, things like that. So especially now it really helps because I'm talking to professors in nutrition science every day. And so being able to talk to them, understand their research and understand why it's important to our center is important.
You have like the vocabulary to communicate with everyone. You can kind of understand maybe what their lab work entails.
Right.
I absolutely see that would be really important.
Yeah.
And would you be able to talk about the job you have right now, or what the role you ended up in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I took this job right when the pandemic hit, so perfect timing.
Yes.
um, so it was a little crazy, but where I work right now, so we are so universities will have like centers and institutes, and some of them are within certain colleges within a university. If you think about sort of like university, college, center, things like that. But our initiative is across all colleges in a university, so we are run sort of from the top down. And so, what I do for my role is I help run our research strategy. So, thinking about what do so to do research, you need to get money for that research. So the people that are giving that money out, what do they want to see for that type of research? What are these areas of interest that are kind of coming to the surface that we need more research in? So um, one of the big things from the National Institutes of Health, which provides a lot of research funding in the United States, they have a plan all around precision nutrition. And precision nutrition is kind of like, what about you that makes you unique also determines what types of foods you should eat to be healthy. And so there's a lot of research that needs to be done there. And so my job has been to say, okay, who works at Ohio State? What professors do we have at Ohio State? What research are they doing? How could that fit within those priorities at the National Institutes of Health? And then how can we support that network to apply for funding and things like that? So that's kind of one side of my job, is that whole research strategy. The other side of my job is working on special projects. So I might get a little bit more involved in writing a grant. And so, for instance, I'm helping to run a clinical trial on looking at whole wheat bread versus white bread in pre-diabetic patients. And so I'm literally working with the bakery to make the bread, giving it to a dietitian who's doing the clinical study. But I helped write that grant, so I get to help complete the project too. So there's a lot of, it's kind of a nice balance where I get to think high level, but also be on the ground doing very like, tactical research type of things.
Wow, that is really cool. And I've never seen such a job where it's like this actually uses a lot of skills from your PhD. Like you need your research skills, your writing skills, like talking with the professors at their level. Like this is like a very specific PhD career, I feel like.
It's very specific, and I'm very fortunate that I've been able to, as time progressed, kind of like customize the role around myself and like what I think is best for the initiative and what I can bring to it. And so that's a little bit why I took the role in the first place, is because I knew that I could mold it into something very specific for me that would be good for my own growth, but also help this initiative that I care about, because I essentially got my PhD through the initiative. So I get to also continue it at the same time.
No, that sounds super fulfilling. Whenever a job gives you the freedom to sort of do what you're interested in, that is the best feeling in the world.
Yes.
And there's one other thing I want to ask you about, Matt, because you actually host a TV show called Tasting Columbus. Can you tell me how this TV show happened? How did you get this gig?
Let's take a step back. It's a web series.
No, in my heart, it's a TV show.
It felt like that when it first started. Our episodes used to be almost 30 minutes long, which was a lot of filming for 30 minutes of content. But it was, so like I said, I started a new job at the beginning of the pandemic. And, as some of your viewers might know, or they'll find out, when you start a new job, things can be a little slow. And especially during the pandemic, things were very slow. So I talked with my boss and I was like, hey, I think I'm going to submit like an audition tape to this like casting call that just came out from like a local media outlet. I'll let you know what happens. And he's like, yeah, okay, like that could be cool for OSU or whatever, let's see how that goes, or you can flex your time around it. And so I ended up getting selected for a screen test from a tape that I sent in. And then and the tape, like, it's so you feel so silly like putting these things together. But I guess it worked. And then so I did the screen test, which was also very silly. I thought I bombed it. Because it required a lot of like improvisation and things like that, which since then I've taken some classes in, but at the time had no experience. But I ended up getting the role. I think they really liked that I'm a food scientist. And so the show itself is, I would describe it, I think their initial concept was sort of like a cross between like Anthony Bourdain and like Guy Fieri, which sounds a lot more intellectual than it actually is. It's very much a fun, like, here are the restaurants in Columbus to try. These are new spaces. I got to inject a little bit of science into the content as well, which is really fun. And I think that's a little bit of an angle that they liked. So yeah, it's been almost 2 years doing it, which is crazy actually. But we started doing like 30-minute episodes, and now we've transitioned to, smaller bites of content. So like each episode now is maybe 2 minutes max. It goes up on social channels and things like that. And we've been seeing really good engagement with that. Our latest one, we went to the Ohio State Fair, which was really fun.
Yes. Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah.
What I love about the show, because I've never been to Columbus, no, have never been to any restaurants in Columbus, but I love when you drop a food science fact. Oh, that's what makes the show for me, how you sneak it in.
Well, that's the thing. They're not even. I'm not even sneaking it in. They'll be filming and they're like, "All right, now give a food science fact," and I have to be like,
Oh, really? So they're like encouraging it. They're like, yeah, give
Yeah,
us some science.
yeah," and especially now because it when we switched to a sort of a shorter format, we were still kind of figuring it out. How do we get the food science fact in there? Because that's a really fun part of the show. And it was a good learning opportunity for me too. Of like, I could talk about why lobsters turn red when you boil them for like I could give a 15-minute lecture on that, but how do you distill it down to literally 10 seconds of content? So that was a big learning curve for me, and so that was a really good growth opportunity. And then now it's even shorter, like concise.
Wow. No, it is really hard because what I think about a lot is like how to teach my students, which are bachelor students versus those that are master students, but also for YouTube, it's like how can I teach someone who has none of those degrees?
Right.
So you got to have your different levels of information.
Right, exactly. And so it's how do I say this in a way that's easily understandable but still accurate, and do it really quickly while thinking on my feet.
Yes. Yeah. No, that is quite a challenge. Yes. Yeah. No,
But
no.
it's been really fun.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's very fun to watch you because it feels like I'm talking to you, but I'm just watching you go, oh, clip you're in. Yeah, I don't actually get to talk to the real Matt, but it feels a little like it.
Well, good. That's what I'm going for.
Yes. Yeah. All right. I have one more question, which I like to ask all my guests. And this is if do you have any piece of advice for food science students, or what is something you wish you would have known when you were a student?
I spent a lot of time in undergrad almost like not really sure what I wanted to do, I think. And so I really found that through not only through internships, but through IFT. So kind of going back to the first part of our conversation, best piece of advice, get involved. It might not seem like it might not be immediately obvious what you get out of the experience, but I think you'll quickly find out. So I would definitely encourage you to at least get involved in your local student chapter, your local professional section. But if you can get involved in IFT at sort of like the international level, I would definitely suggest doing that.
Yes, I obviously have to agree. Like, just send the email asking how you can get involved. Just ask the person because I always used to be intimidated and I wouldn't send that email. Just
Right.
do it. People are probably very nice. They'll be happy to have you. Like, don't let anything stop you.
Exactly. Exactly. It'll pay off.
Yes, in a million different ways. So just do it. Yes. No. All right, Matt, thank you so much for coming on my channel. It was also super fun to catch up with you.
Oh, it's been so long.
No, it has been. It has been. But I hope people enjoy our episode. I hope, they get involved. But I think, hopefully they'll join IFT and follow in our footsteps, I guess.
Right. We need more leaders.
Yes. No, awesome, Matt. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye, Abby.